ex-wife abandoned us 6 years ago. Now she showed up at my door, crying and begging to be in our daughter's life again. I almost fell for it until her sister told me the cruel truth. My ex-wife left us 6 years ago. She arrived at my home, sobbing and pleading to be involved with our daughter once more. Right up to her sister gave me the unkind news. So a brief history before I discuss what has completely changed my life. I, 32, have raised my daughter as a single father. In the last 6 years, 16F has been the joy of my life, and I cherish her much more superior to all I have raised her with. Since her mother, I, my former spouse, 31, F left us when my daughter was 2 years old. Years old, she fled with a few dollars, and spouse is now 40 years old and has never looked. She returned without even saying farewell to our "she just left me" or my kid a note, expressing her regret. But she had discovered her real love, and she desired to begin a new life with him, she declared. Refused to become a wife or mother, nevertheless, and that she never enrolled in, for background, my daughter was due to my wife's unintended pregnancy, and I had a casual romantic relationship, but opted to wed for our daughter. But never once have I regretted having my daughter, and I would have it no other way. Even if I tried my most challenging to treat my wife well as a husband, however, I suppose that didn't work out for her note, in which she stated she hoped that without her, we would be content, and because she knew I was an excellent father, and that would look after our daughter, and read the note, added that I could be as truthful as I desired to discuss with our daughter about what occurred to her mother when she grew older, sufficient to comprehend, and a note she had divorce papers with her, signatures on them already. She has inquired for none of our part, even alimony, marital property, and made no claims to rights. I was heartbroken over our daughter, and I was devastated and couldn't believe that she would take a similar action to what we had been after 10 years of marriage. We had been content, or so I believed, having met in college, and despite our romantic relationship informally, we had a lovely and enjoyable time. Married not long after learning of it regarding the pregnancy, and I was ecstatic. Upon the birth of my daughter, she was the most gorgeous infant, and I believe we were both pleased with the outcome. We enjoyed a pleasant life together. We were well employed and had a lovely home. A devoted family, with all the resources anyone could ask for, could ever desire. So I was sure we experienced issues like every other couple does, but I tried my hardest to follow my. After my wife departed, I made an effort to months without speaking to her, although she blocked me on and changed her phone on. I tried to locate her on social media, but she moved with her new partner to another state. I attempted to find some answers, beloved, via my in-laws, yet it seems that she had ceased communicating with them altogether. Hence, it wasn't simply our daughter and I attempted to find some resolution, but she had left me feeling just anguish and bewilderment about the man she fled from. I learned that she met someone at her gym, who he was, and attempted to connect with a member of his family. However, he lived alone, but none of his neighbors did know a lot about him. I managed to discover, although they informed me that he worked there resigned a few weeks prior. So roughly eventually, the two of them eloped, and I decided to give up looking for nothing. It's not as if I desired her return. I've been hurt and angered throughout my life, but I had to go on to protect our daughter. Too little to comprehend what had transpired, but her intelligence sufficient to discern her mother's absence. She inquired about her location and when she would return, sobbing and pleading with me to return her. She claimed to have missed and cherished her. Hopefully, no parent ever must endure the anguish of seeing their child in that condition saddened me. Hard to see her in that way. I was unaware of it. I didn't want to lie to her. Vanished since she was. She was miserable and desired happiness. Informed her that her mother had found a new companion who gave her joy and what she desired to be with him. I informed her that mother adored her. Even if she was unable to be with, I told her that daddy is right now, cherished her deeply, and he would always, I assured her, that we would be together. All right, just the two of us. She didn't appear to. She still asked me at first to accept it. Concerning her mother, every day, she still clung to me every night at school while crying. Was extremely difficult, since she would other children with their mothers, and so forth. How are the children in our small town? Upon my wife's departure, word spread like some children must have heard their wildfire. Parents discuss it, as does my daughter, having to listen to a variety of pointless comments. I had to relocate to a new relocated her to a new school and neighborhood. It took a while to keep her safe, yet eventually she began to recover. Progressively ceased inquiring about her with me mother. She gradually stopped sobbing and urged to share my bed with me for the night. Started to accept that her mother had died, and it took a long time for her to return. Of work, but I believe she understood that she hadn't misbehaved and it wasn't her fault, and she realized that was never left behind an unloved talk about her mother any longer, and I've been enjoying the feeling of moving on. From that recent phase in our lives, she has even begun advising me to obtain a boyfriend and cracks jokes about my permanently unmarried. I am incredibly proud of her and how resilient she's been as I work difficult to give her a decent life and a nice schooling. I've always encouraged her hobbies and supported her abilities, was afraid she would be let down once more, as her mother departed 6 years ago. I've never dated or given it any thought. Sometimes I long for company, yet the demands of one's daughter are paramount than mine, and I have no intention of dating someone until much later in life. Enjoy your life, even if it's only. It never feels like the two of us are without something that I can rely on my daughter and my family as well. Utterly spoiled and loved by her dad, mom, and uncles. Here is where things went awry for my former mill last week. 55F, let's refer to her as Judith, arrived at unexpected and uninvited in my residence. She had disappeared from our lives ever since her daughter abandoned us when I was Judith, still married, could hardly conceal her disrespect for me. As a result of her believed I wasn't qualified to be a member of their household, as opposed to me possess wealth and worked in a blue-collar job. She had never sent a message, visited, or called a gift or card on my daughter's birthdays. She'd never displayed any curiosity or worry about her granddaughter, for which she had never expressed regret, clarified, or assumed any accountability. She had never accepted her daughter's behavior as helped us in any way, yet she possessed the gall to knock on my door and behave as if I were some enormous debt to her. Truthfully, I didn't even recognize her. It had been such a long time since I'd seen her. It took her a while to introduce herself. Before I could quite comprehend who she was, I was perplexed beyond belief and questioned her. At my residence, she was acting as though she looked at me as if I had said something absurd and informed me that logically her granddaughter was the reason she was there, and pull her out of the trash I'd been bringing her up before I could say anything. Anything she disclosed to me that she learned that the school my daughter attends is public and that it wasn't appropriate for anyone to her family's and her child's low criteria for their schooling. She stated that my ex-wife, who is her daughter, had returned to live with her in the family house new spouse, and that to finish their family and act in everyone's best interests, she required her granddaughter to attend. Returning to them, I felt enraged and surprised. For an instant, I truly believed she was. What did she mean? Jokingly, by a dump, and all that nonsense regarding a true family when my daughter's only family is, I've done this before, and my family did as well. Lady genuinely believes that she and her deadbeat daughter and an unidentified man would be a better mother to my daughter than I. I was unable to accept that she was capable of mention anything similar, since I am aware of it. My daughter is not being raised in luxury, has the salary of an accountant, although she is never lacking anything, no matter where she travels to a reputable institution. And I pay close attention of her schooling, without a doubt. Educate her at the top universities in the nation. But I know she's intelligent. Will succeed. If she possesses the assistance from myself and certified educators, I informed my mill that she was not entitled to see her, and it was improper for her to take her. I informed her that she was not related to her, and she was not supposed to be with her, and that my daughter's only grandmother is myself. Mother alone, I made no threats to accuse her of trespassing and notify the police. When she at last disclosed her actual colors, she said, if I didn't cooperate, she was able to afford to hire the nation's top attorneys and would file a lawsuit against me if I disagreed. I laughed at what she was saying. That, and inquired as to the basis, and she stated that she would present a fictitious instance, insults directed against me, and claim that I made my ex-wife give up on our daughter and flee to ensure her safety, her own life. I was astounded by what I was informed that her claims consist of obviously entirely untrue. But even so, I could now envision my entire existence as demolished. She made a payment throughout, to threat, fraudulent witnesses, and compile proof that I was aware that I had abused my ex-wife. She was able to accomplish that, and the family of the ex-wife is in law enforcement of generations, including my own Phil was a cop, as was my ex's grandfather, officers whose relationships I knew and may perhaps destroy my life, but I didn't know what to do. So I pleaded with her not to. I informed her that her grandchild was content and well with me. I informed her that my kid and I could speak with, inquire if she desired to know her grandma, and if she did, I didn't mind. Permitting them to view one another, Judith refused to hear anything I had to say to her. Informed me I had a week to return to. I would be hearing from her or her. I was still absorbing everything, lawyer, when she finally took action, and more insane than I ever imagined. She made a cash offer to take my daughter, said that if I chose not to very uncomfortable and costly court appearance processes and attorneys with whom we may work more quickly with this issue, when I, upon asking what she meant, she offered me $50,000 and stated that if I took the money and left and nobody was there, would suffer harm, but I wouldn't have to work once more in my life. When I became enraged, he turned down her absurd offer. To her tone abruptly altered, as she stated that she made an effort to be calm, but if I wished to proceed in a challenging manner, she was more than willing to make accommodations for me being in disarray ever since I was unaware of where may I go to ask for assistance. Hiring a lawyer, naturally, but I pondered the potential benefits of that if they were attempting to fabricate proof against me. I was afraid of what lay ahead. since I am aware of the type of lady she is that courts are seldom lenient toward dads without children. I did not want to lose my daughter is all that I have, but she is too poor to afford the best attorneys for my situation, so things don't appear nice. I don't know what to do with my daughter. Did not know of any of this, and I was unable to determine if I should even let her know that I know she even recalls her grandmother. The idea of moving in with her seems improbable, but the reality is that she is a minor and may be removed from my presence against our mutual desires. So with a strategy I knew was dangerous, but it was the only action I believed I was capable of considering the situation. Following a week of being completely tormented, I went by my mill, declaring that I would not consent to battle a fabrication against me in the courts, and I'm not interested in going their funds from her. As a result of my daughter's not something that I would just in return for cash. I informed her that my daughter showed no desire to see her. I had told you the truth, mother. Approached her about it, and she was very explicit that the sole person in whom she showed interest in remaining with me. Judith's response was, as anticipated, she informed me that as my daughter is a child who has no idea what's best for her. But I should be aware of that better as a father, I informed her. Know just what was optimal for my daughter, and didn't require her input regarding. She mentioned that she would be at my tomorrow, and I will have to either allow her to bring my daughter along or accept the consequences of my actions to end our call. I was already aware of what the following day she definitely appeared at my door, but in reality, I wasn't there. The location of my neighbor next door daughter let herself in, and Judith. Indeed, after a while, I saw, when Judith's car drove off, I wasn't sure if, despite my daughter's departure, I hoped that everything would proceed according to my plan, because while it was nearby, nothing would go wrong. At 11 in the morning, Judith departed, alongside my daughter, and right away they departed, and I awaited a call that I knew I would soon realize that it was a really tense hour. But in actuality, only I received a call from a woman who that she was with CPS and inquired whether I claimed to know where my kid was gone, and to the best of my knowledge, the woman said her daughter should be at home, telling me she had gotten a call from my daughter claiming to be housed at the home of her grandmother, is against her hopes, and wished to make sure I was knowing this. I declared that I had a few arguments with my former partner Mill, but never gave my daughter his permission. When I went any place with her, I was questioned to go to a precinct where I went there with my daughter, and it was my daughter ran to me when she saw the mess. It's too difficult to understand, but okay. After speaking with all parties concerned, my daughter, myself, my ex-wife, Mill, and her spouse, it was evident that their child abuse was not reported, and this was a warning about a family issue that we received thus. If we brought my daughter any harm, more emotional or physical suffering, there would be consequences for us, and that welfare checks might be present. I made an effort to cooperate as much as feasible and guaranteed my desire, nothing more than the security of my child and my daughter's well-being, was questioned by CPS representatives, even though I'm not sure precisely what they discussed regarding my daughter informed me that she claimed to be content to live with me and that her mom and grandma were unknown to. She didn't want to live with her. After that, she was permitted to return home with us, and I was naturally, incredibly, I am glad to have met my former spouse and her new spouse in the precinct. But we didn't. Honestly, I just chatted with my mill, and it was not a cordial exchange of words. She informed me that she was sure I had to organize everything and created my daughter called the police, saying she refused to accept it, saying that I had put everything in danger and stolen everything would be too far gone, and that repercussions for what I did, I informed her, that I needed to be more knowledgeable about what she was saying. Regarding it, she ought not to have taken away from my daughter without my consent, and I was uninvolved in the subsequent events. That, even though I left with my daughter, I appreciated having her by my side. Also fearful about what those individuals could do to remove my daughter in the future from me following this, I doubt it. She intends to pull off the entire act of building a fictitious case against me, because it'll be pretty evident that they are only attempting to regain control over my daughter. But you'll never truly understand I was grabbed by my ex-wife however, she stated as she departed that I was being awful individual, and that my daughter must be aware of a mother's and grandmother's, and I am robbing them of their life. At first, I had no desire to swap. I only spoke to her once before losing my cool. She was not a mother, I informed her, and lacked the authority to speak what she stated, that she has changed for the better and is simply desired to support our daughter. I departed before she could continue to control me. Since then, I've gone farther. Am I overanalyzing what you said? Genuinely being a lousy father here. Ida preventing my daughter from having her connection to her granny and mom. Just to let you know, I've been attempting to read through all of your messages and remarks regarding my post. There are some questions that I cannot answer, as I desire no one to come from the family of the ex-wife to discover this post and then cause me to go into trouble. The main reason I even publish something on Reddit is that I'm aware of my potential to be anonymous as I wish. So I have some positive news to share. Some awful news. But there is also good news. Judith is not up to any new mischief. For me, I'm still anxious and anticipating something to occur, but things are going well thus far. Here's the unfortunate news. In just a few days following the major event that I attended cooking dinner at home when I heard the doorbell. When I looked at the time, it's too soon for my daughter to return. From the soccer match, assuming it was most likely a neighbor or a delivery, I strolled over and casually headed to respond to it. But what I discovered elsewhere, this was not a place for casual standing. Before me, my ex-wife was crying. I wish I were making jokes about my ex-wife, someone I never thought I'd see at my doorway ever again to express my shock would represent an underestimation of the century. I was in shock that she was there. In the residence, where we shared housing following our union, when he brought my daughter, leaves the hospital, at the same time, the home she left us for so long, I briefly felt as though I was transported back to the period when my daughter was a newborn. I tried, when we were still together, fervently, trying to keep our union intact and her growing more remote and chilly every day. To be honest, I had no idea that it was conceivable to experience so many feelings all at once, and in such a short time it was wild at the moment. But the motion that the strongest of all my emergence is I was so furious that I was confused. I had never found closure with her. After all these years, she was finally here. As he stood in front of me, I considered how it would be messy if my daughter were house, and if she had let herself in rather than me. And it only made me more furious. I questioned her about her actions. There, And if this represented yet another attempt at removing my kid, she ought to go away before I reported her to the police had just about finished speaking. And I just began to cry. I'm referring to a tears that seemed never to stop falling her runny nose, choking, and everything that before even gathering my intelligence concerning me and even utter anything, she entered a pleading state of emotion me to at least once listen to her quite uncomfortable. Something I didn't want to her in my home. But she wasn't feeling well. Regarding the notion of a woman crying at my door for everyone to observe in the neighborhood. Though I could come to regret it, I asked she entered, and we took a seat in the living, and she began pouring her heart out about her motivation for being there. Unexpected arrival wasn't only a coincidence that comes as no surprise to anyone shedding tears when you tell me about all the times she didn't spend with our daughter, a restless night spent feeling sorry for her options all the way around. I'm just sat there, utterly perplexed. Why now? She asked after all these years, that she had been experiencing challenges, a period of her life that caused her to reflect her history and helped her understand her errors. She disclosed to me that she and her husband had debts, and they had suffered losses, everything, including their homes and employment vehicle, and they were stranded somewhere. She had nothing to eat, so she arrived at, for assistance, Judith stated they had reached their lowest point and acknowledged their errors, and they desired to alter their way of life. He desired to begin by making amends to my daughter, apologized to me multiple times, and declared that she was aware of what she performed a terrible job. And I didn't have to pardon her, but she'd like to receive an opportunity to be in my daughter's life, claim she would demonstrate her abilities, and I strive to be an excellent mother to my daughter. Make up for all the time I told her she had lost, that I needed more time to consider it, but was unable to assure her of anything. When my daughter is expected to return from second soccer practice, I was against her. To enter the home and see her mother, I begged her to go since she was crying, and thank goodness, I've been up all night. I'm considering my options. I haven't discussed it with my daughter this, yet I'm compelled to question if it's time to go past this and accomplish what's optimal for my daughter. And I'm not inclined to allowing my grief and negative emotions to interfere with my wife's efforts to do that. Co-parenting may not work out. Be the world's worst thing. My views on this are constantly shifting, and I would value any guidance regarding its update. Some folks are the same. I apologize for the delay in updating. However, considering you read my previous, let you know that I was thinking about accepting my ex's involvement in my daughter's life again. I spent a lot of time reflecting and read the feedback from a lot of you folks who said that perhaps I need to give her another opportunity. Therefore, I reasoned that maybe I could test it out. So I gave her a call after a few days later and informed her that I would my daughter, that she feels terrible about what she did and desires another opportunity, but only if she agreed. And I would think about co-parenting her, was ecstatic and gave me thanks, and expressed her desire for her daughter would allow her to try that again, which I still needed to be more content with. On the circumstances, and was merely acting in, I did this to please my daughter, deciding when would be the best to inform her. All of this, but let me state that I'm happy I waited. It appears that my former spouse's unexpected arrival lasted longer than expected of self-repair and catharsis. As she has attempted to portray it, she approached me desperate as a result of her mother hung her trust fund above her head, similar to a twisted negotiating tool if my former spouse doesn't persuade me in some way. And join our daughter's mother intends to end her life, her completely withdrawing from the money everything to her nephew and sister. Instead, provide further context regarding Judith. You haven't been particularly well liked by her children. She is from a wealthy family. And upon my Phil's death disappeared when Judith, my wife, was a teenager, inherited all of his wealth. And she has consistently been so domineering toward both of her daughters. The elder sister of my ex-wife, who relocated halfway across the country as soon as she turned 18, to obtain she was free of her controlling mother. In the same manner that my grandmother Emily, 38F, the sister of the ex-wife, married consequently a few years before when her daughter was born, Judith was crazy with them. She would frequently appear at their home without warning, questioned Emily's caregiving, essentially completed all that she was able to complete. Their whole Emily put up with her wretched family, all because Judith possessed trust fund for Emily's child, but managed to evident that she needed to be in her. She gave her life if they desired that money. The same upon the birth of my daughter, but I disregarded the trust fund as Emily, nor did my former partner. Thus, when my former partner left, my daughter and I didn't want to carry on a connection to Judith. Her warning of removing the trust fund didn't imply I convinced myself quite a little that money was never there in the first place. And I much would have instead that my daughter had a devoted family as opposed to a toxic domineering granny solely for financial gain. When my former spouse and her new partner lost all of their possessions, they had no choice but to repay his loan, although she consented to seek assistance from Judith. But she only wanted her under one condition: only grandchild, and desired my former partner to either contact me again or persuade for me to allow them to take my daughter as brought up by her husband and me. My former ex is many things, but she's not ignorant. She was aware that she would never have an opportunity to reconcile with me. Therefore, when her intimidation strategy failed, she took the only thing she believed she could attempt to elicit sympathy from me for her by pretending to feel so profoundly regretful regarding her previous behavior. I have to admit, she was pretty attractive, compelling. However, there was one error on her part: become too arrogant when I assured her I'd talk to her about co-parenting Sal's sister and how she had deceived Emily, spotted me even after all these years. This as a danger to my daughter and ex-wife. Being in Judith's life entails the children. Emily and her won't be the only, those vying for the family's finances. Moreover, if my ex and I were to reconcile, any future children she had with her mother would be in the queue as well. So Emily, what she believed to be the optimal approach. To protect her family's finances, she contacted me and revealed all to me. I feel so foolish for falling for this act, the idea of which disgusts me, of her merely utilizing our daughter as a ways to make money. I'm fortunate that I discovered this before informing my daughter anything and raised her expectations. I finally learned my lesson. However, in the future, nobody from that relatives will be permitted to visit. Neither my daughter nor I will ever update 3. A few of you have been curious about what, after learning, I did or said something to my ex. The reality, albeit this may come as a disappointment, but I didn't take any action. I'm over the drama and want to leave. Returning to my pre-Judith everyday life appeared, I informed my former partner that I had reconsidered being a parent because my daughter showed little interest during our time together. I've advised her to act appropriately and maintain Judith in order too. So if they try to pull any more foolish pranks, I am do not be scared to follow the law. Hopefully, none of their lots will be any more disturb me once more.